Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Renee Crossman, and I'm a faculty member in the Faculty of Nursing here at Memorial. Along with my colleagues, Karen Dobbin-Williams, who's also a faculty member in the Faculty of Nursing, as well as Upinder Sarker, who is at the Faculty of Nursing in the Department of Health Systems and Sustainability at MacEwan University. We would like to extend a very warm welcome to our presentation today, A Quest for Knowledge Using Gamification. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank CIDL and the Tile Fund for the funding for our project. So to begin, the objectives for our project were as follows. So through a two-phase project, we wanted to apply a blended gamification approach using online and in-person strategies to the teaching and learning of select concepts in pathophysiology and pharmacology in the spring 2022, which was phase one, and fall 2022, phase two course offerings. We wanted to use data analytics from the Learning Management System, or LMS, so for us it would be Brightspace, to measure learners' level of engagement. We wanted to use formative and summative questionnaires and end-of-course focus groups to explore learner satisfaction following the incorporation of gaming strategies in the phase one and phase two. We also wanted to use the knowledge that we gained from the first phase, so in spring, to refine the incorporation of the gamification strategies into phase two. So, just a little bit of background, I guess. Karen and I have taught pathophysiology and pharmacology, respectively, for over a decade. So, it's been quite longer than that, but we'll just leave it at over a decade. So, these courses are highly detailed and highly interrelated. Students often struggle to learn the concepts within each course, as well as the connections between the courses. Patho and Pharm are foundational to subsequent nursing courses and entry to practice competencies. Assisting student learning in these courses is paramount to their critical thinking and their clinical judgment throughout the nursing curriculum and after graduation. So together with Upinder, who has a background in gamification, we decided to implement these gaming elements into both pathophysiology and pharmacology to augment learner engagement and satisfaction. So gamification is the application of gaming concepts to a non-game context. The gaming elements of the narrative or use of a story, leveling, so using increasingly complex scenarios and questions, rewards or points earned, and the ability to retry without penalty allow learners to practice their critical thinking and clinical judgment in a non-threatening environment. They get to make real-life choices without real-life consequences. Appealing to many learners, the various diverse gaming elements fit with concepts of universal design learning, or UDL, where such strategies can enhance the motivation, resourcefulness, and goal achievement of learners. So we implemented, as noted, a two-phase project. So we started in the spring 2022 course offerings, and based on what we learned in spring 2022, we made some changes as necessary as we went into the fall. So predominantly, I guess, or as an example, we added two more quests. So in the spring, we had two quests, and then in the fall, we had four. We used a blended approach with both online and in-person in-class components. So for the online, we developed what we called online learning quests. And based on a scenario, learners had to answer increasingly complex questions, and they had the ability to continue to try questions over and over until they were successful in their answers. This fostered the repetition of learning, and learners received a small percentage for each quest completed towards their final grade. This was a learning tool and not evaluative, so it really didn't matter how often they had to try to answer the questions. For the in-person, in-class component, we reviewed cardiovascular concepts, so very exciting, in the form of jeopardy. So mimicking the TV game show, we divided our students into teams, and together they worked to answer the questions. If a team gave the incorrect answer, another team could respond or retry. And so Karen and I we also used these questions and answers as teachable moments. So when students had difficulty with some of the questions, we use that as a teachable moment.
Okay, so gamification strategies were implemented using H5P, which is an online OER, is an open education resource. So, as Renee mentioned, using the strategies of narrative, leveling up, rewards, and the ability to retry, we created a total of 4 quests. To start, 2 quests were created for the spring term students. This included Peter and his pain and Dawn gets diabetes. And then in the fall term, we added 2 additional quests, which included Andy and his asthma and infection. So each quest followed a patient, which entailed using a narrative, and the application of content increased in difficulty, leveling up as the student progressed through the course. Each quest was available for 1 week following content review in class. And this, what's on the screen right now, is an example of a module in the infection quest, which follows Andy after his asthma exacerbation in the asthma module. So using H5P, a variety of activity types were utilized, which included fill in the blank, select all, image selection, flashcards, and others. Each quest was comprised of 14 to 18 questions, and some were independent and others were grouped together. Okay. So this slide here shows an example of an activity that students had to complete in the diabetes module. And then students had the ability to check their responses, and they could redo the quests as often as they wanted. Okay. This is another example of the diabetes quest activities. So this was flashcards. Answers had to be spelled correctly, and in order to check the card, the students could flip it over to reveal the correct answer. And students who completed all the quests successfully were awarded 1.25% per quest to their total grade. So as a component of end of term review, as Renee mentioned, Jeopardy was completed in class. And so this activity utilized rewards and challenges as gamified strategies. The winning team received gift cards, and the questions became increasingly challenging as students progressed through each column. Okay. So in order to explore engagement and satisfaction with the application of gaming elements to both courses, we gathered the following data. So we looked at data analytics from the online learning quests via Brightspace, and this included the total time spent on the quests and the number of attempts that students took. We also looked at data from post-quest surveys, which included both quantitative and qualitative. And then last, we looked at narrative data based on exit questions provided to the students at the end of the courses. Okay, so based on the time of completion, as you can see, each quest took longer to complete than the one before it. This may have been due to the progressively increasing level of difficulty in quests. Increasing the level of challenge was intentional in development, both in and between quests. As students progressed through each quest, the content and type of strategies applied or the questions they were asked increased in difficulty, from knowledge recall to critical application. For example, within the quest, it started off with easier questions and then became more challenging between quests. Each quest was generally more difficult than the one before it, and it was built on the one prior to, such as the infection quest, which was built on Andy and his asthma. Hence, students had to consider the patient's recent past medical history and interventions in relation to the progress in the disease process. In regards to the attempts, most students completed each quest once. The quests were open for a set period after the content was covered in class, and then they were closed. The quests were reopened at the end of term prior to the final exam to allow for student review. Okay. So students then had the opportunity to provide feedback via surveys in both the spring and fall term. In the spring term, students were invited to respond to a survey at the end of the term following their experiences with the gamified content. However, this resulted in a poor response rate. We only got 6 responses the first time we did it. And due to this low number, this data set was not included in the evaluation. In an attempt to increase response rates, surveys were added after each quest in the fall course, which was a total of 4 opportunities. The surveys consisted of 2 main questions. The gamified activity helped me too, and then the students responded to a series of statements. And rate your agreement with the following statements. using a Likert scale for responses, 1 being strongly disagree to 5 being strongly agree. In total, students provided feedback approximately 237 times. The responses were generally positive in regard to students' perception regarding engagement, learning experience, application to content, safe learning environment, and others. For example, on this chart, the gamified activity helped me to understand the ideas and concepts presented. 89.87% of students agreed or strongly agreed. Next, students also provided narrative comments, which provided further insight into students' perceptions regarding these activities.
So our post-quest surveys also had space for narrative feedback, and it was overwhelmingly positive. Some positives that the students reported online with the online quests were that they were like real life situations. They enjoyed the ability to retry until they were successful in their answers. They found the quests were interesting and engaging. They liked that the pathophysiology and the pharmacology topics were linked, and most students liked the variety of question types and that the quests helped them to test their own knowledge. We did receive constructive feedback. This included that words had to be spelled exactly. Students wanted more visuals in the quests, and they also wanted more quests on more topics. A few students disliked certain question types, for example, crossword puzzles, while other students really liked crossword puzzles. So we've included a direct quote here from a student to highlight how students perceived the quests to mimic real life. So one student said, I think this quest was awesome at using a real life type scenario and making me see just how everything learned in class applies in real life and how I can put everything I have been learning in class into reality. So we also asked students to complete a survey at the end of the course with the questions that you can see here on the screen. So for question 1, students weren't really sure what gamification was. Some people were unsure. Some people thought it might be a childish game. Some people just said, oh, it sounds interesting. Some people thought it was simulation or crossword puzzles. Most had not experienced gamification in their courses. For question 2, the students reported that they enjoyed the Jeopardy game. They liked practicing with real life scenarios. They liked practicing until they got it right. They liked the engagement, and they liked taking their own time to learn. For question 3, students reported that they wanted more quests on more topics. Some wanted it for every topic in the courses. They also reported that they would like to have more multiple choice questions. For question 4, some things that the students reported was that it was informal, it was interactive, it was exciting, it was a safe environment, it made them apply their information more. For question 5, the response was overwhelming. It was way better. For question 6, students, I should be saying learners, reported that they would like to see gamification incorporated into many more courses. For question 7, learners reported overwhelmingly that they felt far more engaged than compared to traditional delivery, such as lecture. And for question 8, students were overwhelmingly satisfied with their learning experience. So threaded throughout our project using the principles of universal design, we gave consideration to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We incorporated Knoll's adult learning theory, where learning is enhanced when it's immediately applicable to real-life contexts, when adults have control or influence over the educational experience, where learning depends on active involvement of the learner and a climate of respect and comfort. Learning is also enhanced when connections are created and when learners are successful, and it's facilitated when learners receive feedback. We feel that we were able to accomplish this with these learning quests. Equity, diversity, inclusion is also achieved by appealing to different learning styles. So some learning styles that we attempted to appeal to were visual spatial, verbal linguistic, logical mathematical, social interpersonal, and solitary intrapersonal. We also utilized Bloom's taxonomy. So activities and questions in the quests ranged from knowledge to comprehension to application, to analysis, to synthesis, to evaluation types of questions. And the NCSBN clinical judgment measurement model is a new measurement model that's being used in the next generation NCLEX exam. This is the final licensure exam that all graduates of Bachelor of Science and Nursing programs in Canada have to write to become licensed as a registered nurse. We felt that using quests such as these, this aligns with this new NCSBN clinical judgment measurement model and introduces early into the nursing program how to answer questions on this final licensure exam.
So for dissemination, we are currently working on a manuscript to submit to a nursing education journal about our project. Along with this conference, we're also presenting at the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing, or CASN conference, at the end of May. And we will also present at Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, or STILE conference, in June in PEI. We also plan to hold some lunch and learn sessions at both the Memorial Faculty of Nursing as well as MacEwan Faculty of Nursing in this coming fall 2023. We also plan to continue to implement gaming elements in pathophysiology and pharmacology because these strategies have been so successful thus far with our students in terms of enhancing their satisfaction and engagement in learning. We also plan to apply for future funding to complete a study using what we have learned in this project as a foundation. We originally wanted to explore knowledge acquisition through the use of pre and post quest quizzes. However, given the newness of these strategies for our students, we focus more on satisfaction and engagement, which are very involved in knowledge acquisition. So going forward, this is something that we would no doubt be using in future projects. So looking at the knowledge acquisition along with other aspects of incorporating gaming elements such as enhancing motivation, and of course, looking again at engagement and satisfaction. So these are our references, this slide and this slide as well. And here's our contact information. Thank you very, very much for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions after the presentation, of course, here is our contact information for the three of us. We would gladly welcome any questions that you have now.
I see that Peggy Hancock asked a question. So excellent way to help learners bridge the content taught between these two complex courses. And Peggy is a faculty member, colleague of ours out in Corner Brook, who taught pathophysiology for many years as well. So did you replace the lectures with gamification, or were these gamification exercises completed after class? So Peggy, thank you for your question. We still used our traditional lectures, and we also had like tutorials where we covered content and used case studies and things like that. This was an additional thing that we set up in Brightspace so that students could go in, and we had it open for a week. Students could go in, they could work on it on their own time. They could go back multiple times to work on it. And then before each midterm and before the final exam, we reopened it so that students could go back and use it as a review tool as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. I'm just wondering if anybody else has any questions. Please feel free to jump in, unmute yourself, or type the question in the chat box. Oh, here. Jane has a question. So which taxonomy did you use?
Do you want me to answer this one, Renee and Upinder?
If you want to, you can go ahead. Yep.
So Jane, thank you for your question. We used Bloom's taxonomy, and we actually used questions of all different types in Bloom's taxonomy. Many of the questions that we use in nursing are application based, but with the final licensure exam with the next generation NCLEX, students have to be able to use all of those, all of the different types in Bloom's taxonomy. So we try to incorporate many, keeping in mind that these are second year courses and it's the first semester of their second year. So they have a limited knowledge at this point with some of it, but we try to use as much as we possibly could, just as an early introduction into the different types of questions that they'll see on that next generation NCLEX exam. Does that answer your question, Jane? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'll probably take the one. I think that's from Kathy. Did you compare course grades or course successfulness between the semesters? And we have not done that yet. That is something that we plan to explore in the future, probably in a future project study as well, to look at the differences with the grades, both with the topic, so the particular topic. So of course we had asthma, infection, pain, and diabetes. So to look at those questions specifically, we could do that going forward. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Kathy? Upinder, do you want to speak to the badges and other tools?
Absolutely. Yeah. We can definitely, we did not use badges for this implementation of gamification, but it's always definitely an option too. I believe in our, when we, as we write our manuscript, we will be outlining the different gamification tools we used and why. And then just in terms of, I guess, like my personal bias, I guess, towards different gamification strategies and tools. One thing we really concentrated on with this application was meaningfulness and what does each strategy actually mean and bring to the student. And so badges definitely can be utilized. But we wanted to definitely focus on components such as using the narrative, using leveling up, just because they do have a little bit, I guess, more critical application. And sometimes things like badges and even leaderboards can detract, I guess, from the student experience, depending on what literature you're reading. But that being said, I think with our future implementation, we have many options for what we would like to do or utilize for next year as well. So yes, thank you so much for your comment.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot there that can definitely be adapted and adopted in so many different fields. Yeah, and definitely a fun way to learn as well, for sure.
Thank you, Keith. And if anyone is interested in collaborating on something from another faculty, nursing loves collaboration. It is our lifeblood. So please reach out to us and we would be happy to discuss how we could collaborate and work on future projects together. Thank you.